Before I dive into the budget number, let me start by telling you a story that reflects how the national budget can impact real lives. Last year, a small business owner in Pokhara, let's call him Ramesh, he was struggling. The tourism slowdown has reduced his trekking gear shop sales by more than half. He thought about closing this shop and moving abroad, but then when the government announced the new budget,
नेपालमा मोदी भन्ने हेभी छ है पोलिसी हाम्रो बजेट सपोर्ट गर्ने इन्फ्लेसन चाहिँ छ है यसले के
अर्ब 30 करोड विनियोजन गरेको छु
अनुमानमाथि सामान्य छलफल गर्न
he heard about the tax reliefs and incentives for small businesses and plans to promote tourism and IT in Nepal. Ramesh decides to hold on a little longer. This year, with the government increasing its spending by 6.2%, people like Ramesh are once again hoping for new opportunities will come, maybe through the tourism, technology, or agriculture. In my opinion, the national budget is not just about numbers, it's about real people like Ramesh, who is looking for a reason to keep believing in Nepal's growth. So today, let me walk you through the Nepal's budget of 2081 and 82, and together, let's see what hopes and changes lie ahead. Hello everyone, I am Adrija Shrestha, and in today's video I am going to walk you through the Nepal's national budget of the fiscal year 2081 and 82. We'll cover everything from how the funds are allocated, the key priorities, the major tax changes, and what all this means for the individual, businesses, and the overall economy. So let's dive in and break it down clearly. Before we get into the detail, let's start with something basic but very important. What actually is a budget? A budget is a financial plan prepared by the government every year. It shows how much money the government expects to earn mainly through taxes, foreign aids, or loans, and how it plans to spend that money across different sectors like education, health, infrastructure, or more. It's basically a roadmap for a country's income and expenses. But more than just number, it tells us about the government's priorities are and where it wants to lead the country in upcoming years. Why does this matter? Because the budget affects everyone, whether you're a student, a farmer, a business owner, or someone looking for a job. It influences fuel price, the cost of goods, tax rates, job creation, and even the quality of public service like health and education. From my point of view, the budget is not just a financial report, it reflects both the government's vision and the economic challenges our country is facing. For example, if more money is going in agriculture and IT, it shows the government wants to promote local production in digital jobs. In simple terms, the budgets tell us what the country can do this year and what it can't. Now that we have talked about what a budget is and why it matters, let's take a quick look at this year's national budget. For this fiscal year 2081-82, the government of Nepal has officially announced the national budget. The total budget announced by the Finance Minister Mr. Barsha Manpun is NPR 1860.30 billion. This budget sets the direction for how the country plans to move forward economically, socially, and development wise in coming years. What's important to understand is that it's not just about spending, it's about planning. This budget outlines where the government wants to put its focus, what challenges it's trying to address, and how it aims to shape Nepal's future. Now, let's take a closer look at the objectives of budget for this year. The first objective is to increase production, productivity, and employment. This shows the government is focusing on real economic output, helping the industries produce more and employ more people. With an estimate of 3.9% GDP growth this year, which is relatively low, this focus is necessary to kickstart the stronger growth. This is one of the most important goals. If people don't have jobs, everything else, education, health, security, becomes secondary. We need new businesses, factories, and investment in agriculture to open up a business opportunity, especially for youth. The second objective is to increase investment by enhancing private sector morale and accelerating economic activity. In this budget speech, the finance minister emphasized reforming laws, improving the business climate, and encouraging both local and foreign investors. Personally, I think this is smart. Nepal needs to move beyond just relying on remittances if we want long term sustainability growth. We have to support entrepreneurs and make investors feel secure. The third objective is to develop human resources. This includes better education, vocational training, and skill building initiatives. In fact, the budget mentioned incentives for IT and startups and studentship to link skills with employment. From my point of view, this objective addresses the root of many of our problems. When our workforce is skilled, they don't have to leave country to earn a decent living, and that helps the whole economy grow stronger. Continuing with the budget objectives, here are the last two. The fourth objective is to reduce economic inequality and poverty by using resources in a balanced and equitable way. According to the budget speech, Nepal's poverty rate dropped by 30.8% in 2008 to 20.3%, and the Gini coefficient, which measures income inequality, also improved. But there is still a long way to go, especially in rural and remote areas. In my view, this objective is very important. There is still a big gap between cities and villages, between education and uneducated, and between different provinces. If this gap keeps growing, it weakens national unity and stability. The fifth and final objective is to make public service delivery more effective. The government has promised reforms in digital system, better administrative services, and accountability in public spending. I think this directly affects our daily life. Whether it is getting a citizenship certificate or visiting health post, people want services that are fast, fair, and transparent. So this objective connects the government with the people in a very real way. Now, let's talk about the main priorities of the budget. These are the areas like government wants to focus on the most. First one being economic reform and private sector promotion. This includes updating outdated laws, erasing tax procedures, encouraging innovation, and protecting investors. The budget proposes forming a high level economic reform commission to guide this process. This is a necessary reset unless we make it easier to do business in Nepal. We can't expect people to invest or create jobs. Second one being development of agriculture, energy, IT, tourism, industry, and infrastructure. For example, rupees 57.29 billion has been allocated for agriculture and rupees 50.74 billion for energy sector. The goal is to modernize farming, expand electricity access, and turn Nepal into a IT hub over the next decade. In my opinion, this is the most practical and powerful part of the business. These sectors are our strength, and if we managed well, we can completely transform Nepal's economy. Third one, social sector development like education and health. This includes improving government school, health centers, public hospitals. Rupees 196 billion has been allocated for education alone. In the health sector, plans are underway to upgrade public hospitals and health centers, aiming to provide more reliable and accessible services for the people. And I feel this approach goes beyond economic policy. It is a commitment to human development. Equality educations and accessible healthcare are essential for building a confident, capable, and productive society. Strengthening these sectors is an investment in a long term well being and resilience of the nation. Fourth one being inclusive and social security. This program will target the elderly people with disabilities and marginalized groups. There are also special budget allocation for Dalit, Adivasi, and Madesi community. To me, this is about fairness. Development should not leave anyone behind, and this priority helps ensure that. Fifth one being good governance and better public health service delivery. More use of digital system, more transparency, and stricter control on corruption. As a citizen, I think this is crucial. If the government is efficient and trustworthy, then every other policy has a better chance of succeeding. Alright, let's now break down the actual budget number. How the NPR 1860.30 billion is being allocated. The budget is divided into three major categories. First one being current expenditure. A total of NPR 1140.66 billion has been allocated under the current expenditure, making up 61.3% of the total budget. This covers regular government responsibilities such as salaries, pension, administrative operations, and the continued delivery of public services. I think this level of spending is essential to keep the system running, but it's also quite high. It's important to recognize that while current expenditure maintains operations, excessive focus on it can limit the resources available for future development and long term growth. A careful balance is necessary to ensure sustainability. Second one is capital expenditure. NPR 352.35 billion has been allocated for capital expenditure, which represents about 18.9% of the total budget. This portion is directed towards development projects such as roads, hydropower, school, hospital, and other critical infrastructure aimed to driving long-term growth and improving public services. Personally, I believe this share should be higher. If we truly want lasting change, we need to build stronger system, better facility, and more resilient infrastructure. That requires a greater commitment to capital investment. Third one is financing provision, mainly debt repayments. NPR 367.28 billion, approximately 19.7% of the total budget has been allocated for the financing provisions, primarily for repaying internal and external loans that the country has already incurred. What concerns me is the rising burden of debt obligations. While borrowing is sometimes necessary, we must ensure that new debts is directly towards productive investment that generates long-term value, rather than being used merely to cover budget shortfalls. So, overly, while this year budget is large, the change challenges lies in effective implementation, particularly in capital projects, and ensuring that every rupee of public money is spent wisely and transparently. Let's now take a look at how this year's budget compares to the last year, because understanding this gives us a clearer picture of where things are heading. This chart shows you a year-wise comparison between 2080-81 and 2081-82 across four main categories. First one being financing provision has slightly increased from NPR 367.45 billion last year to NPR 367.28 billion this year. This part of the budget mostly deals with the things like loan repayments and debt servicing. So, the slight rise shows that the government is still under pressure to manage its financial commitments. Second one is capital expenditure has gone up from NPR 302.28 billion to 352.35 billion. That's a good sign. It means more money is being directed towards development projects like infrastructure, school, hospitals, and energy. In my view, this is a positive step. We are being asking for more investment in real development, and this increase is a more in the real right direction. Next one, next one is current expenditure. Current expenditure has stayed almost the same. NPR 1147.80 billion last year and NPR 1140.66 billion this year. This covers the regular cost of running the government, like salaries and administrations. This is a big chunk, but at least it hasn't grown this year, which might help balance things a bit. And finally, the total budget itself has grown from NPR 1753.10 billion last year to NPR 1860.30 billion this year. It's a 6.2% increase overall. So, what does this tell us? The government is trying to strike a balance, keeping a regular spending steady, boosting development spending a bit, and staying cautious about debt. It's not a dramatic shift, but it's a signal that they want to move towards growth while still being careful. Now that we have seen where the government plans to spend, let's talk about where all the money is actually coming from. This section of the budget is called Source of Revenue, and it explains how the government plans to fund the budget for fiscal year 2081-82. In simple terms, it answers the questions: where does the government get its money from? And it mainly comes from three major sources: tax revenue, foreign grants, and loan or debt. Let's start with the biggest chunk: tax revenue. The government is expecting NPR 1260.30 billion or 67.8% of the total budget to come from taxes. This includes custom duty, VAT, income tax, excise duty, and more. This shows just how much the government relies on people and businesses to pay taxes. So, when tax collection goes down because of low economic activity, the whole budget feels the pressure. That's why it's important that our tax system is fair and the more people and businesses are encouraged to be tax compliant. Next, let's talk about foreign grants. Nepal expects to receive about NPR 52.33 billion, which is only 2.8% of the total budget. Grants are basically non repayable financial help from other countries or international organizations. And to be honest, this number is quite low, and that's actually a good thing. It means Nepal is trying to reduce over dependence on external aids and become more self reliant. But at the same time, it also means we need to be even more efficient with our own resources because we can't expect donors to fill budget gaps. Finally, we have internal and foreign debt. The government plans to borrow NPR 547.67 billion or about 29.4% of the total budget through a mix of internal and external loans. That's almost one third of the total budget funded by borrowing. In my opinion, this is a big responsibility. Borrowing isn't necessarily bad, but it only makes sense if the money is used wisely, like investing in infrastructure, jobs, and energies. If loans are used just to cover regular expenses, it can become a burden to the future generations. So far, we have looked at where the money is coming from. Now, let's flip the question: where is all the money going? The government has outlined several key sectors where large amount of this year budget will be directed. And honestly, these sectors are the backbone of our country's development. Things like agriculture, energy, IT, and tourism. Let's go through them one by one. First up is agriculture sector. The government has allocated NPR 57 billion 290 million for agriculture. This money will be used to commercialize farming, support startup capital for farming groups, and ensure the smooth and timely supply of fertilizers. I believe agriculture supports the majority of our population, yet it still suffers from traditional method and low productivity. If this budget is used properly, it can help modernize our farming system and make agriculture a more secure and profitable occupation, especially for young people considering farming as a career. Next, we have energy sector development with the budget of NPR 50 billion 740 million. This will go into expansion of electricity generation, transmission and distribution plus investment in renewable energy. Personally, I think this is a powerful area to focus on. Nepal has enormous hydropower potential, and if we can generate enough energy, it's not only support local industries but can also become a major export source in the future. It's not just about light, it's about long term economic power. Let's move into information technology sector now. Here, the budget allocation is NPR 7 billion 350 million. This will be used to build digital infrastructure, promote internet access, and support Nepal's digital transformation. In my opinion, this is small but strategic. The world is going digital, and if Nepal can keep up, it can create thousands of remote jobs, improve government services, and even boost entrepreneur among youths. It's a space where even small investment can have a big impact. Next one is tourism promotion, a sector very close to Nepal's identity. The government has announced NPR 11 billion 910 million to improve tourism infrastructure, promote Nepal as a destination, and upgrade facilities for visitors. To me, this makes a lot of sense. Tourism is one of the fastest way to earn foreign income, generate jobs, and promote local cultures. If done right, tourism doesn't just help the economy, it tells the world who we are. Let's now talk about entrepreneurship and industrial development. This year, the government has allocated NPR 1 billion 910 million to support local industries, boost exports, and encourage entrepreneurship. Personally, I think this is a smart move, but it needs to be more than just numbers. If this funding actually reaches the small startups and help create market access, it could lead to the job creation and self-reliant growth, especially in rural and semi-urban areas. Nepal has huge potential for local products. What we need now is policy support and innovation hubs that actually works. Moving on to the sector that really connects with the younger generation, youth and sports. The budget allocated is NPR 3 billion 500 million for youth empowerment programs and employment generation and sports infrastructure. Honestly, I love this focus because Nepal's youth are full of potential, but they often lack opportunities, whether it's sports or skill development. Investment in this sector means creating a confident, capable future generation. If implemented well, this can also reduce the pressure of youth migration abroad. Now, let's focus on education, one of the most critical sector for long-term development. This year, NPR 203 billion 660 million has been allocated to improve education quality, teachers training, infrastructure, and technical education. To me, if Nepal wants to progress, it needs to educate citizens with 21% century skills. But simply building school isn't enough. We need better learning outcomes, updated curriculum, and digital access in classrooms. Another major area is health and population, with an allocation of NPR 86 billion 240 million. This will go towards improving health infrastructure, expanding healthcare services, and launching more public health programs. In my opinion, COVID-19 really showed us how important healthcare is, and this budget seems to be keeping that lesson in mind. Rural hospitals, mobile clinics, and maternal health services must be strengthened, and I really hope this money goes beyond cities. Next, we have a special allocation for women, children, and senior citizens, amounting to NPR 1 billion 600 million. This is funded by gender equality programs, empowerment initiatives for women, and services for children and the elderly. This is the area that often gets overlooked. So, even though the amount is relatively small, it's still important. Protecting and uplifting vulnerable group isn't just about welfare, it's about building a more balanced and just a society. And the next one is social security. The budget sets aside NPR 116 billion for various allowances and support system including senior citizen, marginalized community and people living in poverty. From my point of view, this reflects the government's commitment in inclusiveness, but what really matters the most is the delivery. Are these benefits actually reaching the right people at the right time? That's the part that needs to be monitored. Now, the final one is transport infrastructure. This is something that directly impacts all of us. This sector, the government has allocated NPR 29 billion 880 million. This funding is meant for road construction, maintenance, and expanding the country's transport network. It also includes support for eco friendly transport solutions, which is a great step towards sustainable development. In my opinion, transport is more than just roads and highways. It's about access. A good road can connect villagers to market, students to schools, patients to hospitals, and workers to their job. So, when we invest in infrastructure, we are really investing in mobility, opportunity, and the growth to truly benefit the nation. I just hope this focus isn't only on the big highways, but also on the rural roads and maintenance of existing infrastructure, because there's where change is mostly needed. Now, let's talk about some of the major announcements from this year's budget initiatives that could significantly influence Nepal's development. First one being East-West Highway expansion. The government has allocated NPR 29.88 billion for the expansion of the East-West Highway, also known as Mahendra Highway. Personally, I believe this highway is Nepal's lifeline, linking the east and west region through the Tarai. Expanding it into four-lane expressway will boost trade, cut travel time, and significantly improve road safety. However, it's equally important that the expansion is carried out with a strong focus on quality, transparency, and long-term sustainability. Second one is Rashtrapati Chure Samrakshan Program. The budget highlights Nepal's commitment to forecasting a green and sustainable economy, emphasizing environmental protection, climate adaptation, and introducing of green taxes on pollution product. In my opinion, this is the timely and necessary shift as the impact of climate change becomes more visible. Investing in sustainable practices and green infrastructure will essential for Nepal's long-term resilience in environmental well-being. Third one is preservation and promotion of culture and heritage tourism. These are the renewed force on preserving and promoting Nepal's rich cultural heritage and tourism. This includes funding for traditional festivals, historic sites, and cultural programs. From my point of view, these initiatives not only helps in conserving our cultural identity but also boost tourism and significantly contribute to our economy. Celebrating and maintaining our heritage can attract more visitors and foster national pride. Fourth one is Prime Minister Employment Program. The Prime Minister Employment Program continues to be the priority with substantial allocation aimed to create local empowerment opportunities. I believe this program is crucial in addressing unemployment and reducing the needs for Nepali youth to seek jobs abroad. By providing vocational trainings and job placements within the country, it empowers citizens and strengthens the domestic workforce. Now, let's take a look at the income tax slab for the fiscal year 2081-82. This slide shows how much income tax individuals, couples, and non-resident are expected to pay based on their annual earnings. For resident individuals, if your income is up to 5 lakhs, you'll pay 1% tax. For the next 2 lakhs, it's 10%, then 20% on the next 3 lakhs, then 30% on the next 10 lakhs, 36% on the next 30 lakhs, and finally 39% if your income is above 50 lakhs. For a couple, this slab is slightly relaxed. The 1% rate applies to income up to 6 lakhs and then it is followed by the same pattern. Now, for a non resident, here's something really important. If a person stays in Nepal for fewer than 183 days in a fiscal year, they are considered non resident. And a flat 25% income tax is applied on their total taxable income, no matter how much they earn. But if the person stays for more than 183 days, they are treated as resident and their income is taxed according to the regular slab system, just like citizens. From my point of view, this is a fair rule. It ensures that those who are working and earning in Nepal for a short time contribute to a fixed rate while long term residents follow a progressive system based on how much they earn. So, whether you're a student, a professional, or a business owner, it's important to know which category you fall into because it's directly affect how much tax you'll pay. Now, let's talk about something that can actually help you save money: income tax deduction. These are the amount that can be subtracted from taxable income before calculating your tax. In other words, they reduce the total income on which you have to pay tax. First, we have deduction based on insurance payments. Life insurance up to rupees 40,000, health insurance up to rupees 20,000, house insurance up to rupees 5,000. From my point of view, these deductions are not only useful for tax haven but also promote financial responsibilities. It encourages people to insure their health, life, and property, things we often ignore until it's too late. Second one is there are deductions based on where you live or work, especially in remote areas. These are divided into category A to E with different deduction amount. Category A areas is rupees 50,000, category B is rupees 40,000, category C is rupees 30,000, category D is rupees 20,000, category E is rupees 10,000. And this is actually a great incentives for people working in geographically challenging or underdeveloped regions. It's the government way to encouraging professionals, especially teachers, doctors, and civil servants, to serve in remote communities by offering them some reliefs on tax. So, if you're working in such areas or paying for your insurance, make sure you take advantage of these deductions. Every rupee saved is rupee earned. Moving on to the another important topic, value added tax or VAT. This is the only one key indirect taxes we all pay, whether we notice it or not, from our grocery bills to online services. VAT is built into the price of many things we buy. For the fiscal year 2081-82, the standard VAT rate remains at 13%. But here's what's important. The threshold for VAT registration depends on the types of business and what you're dealing with. If your business deals with goods only, you need to register for VAT if your annual transaction is rupees 5 million or more. If your business deals with services only or a mix of goods and services, the threshold is rupees 3 million. These are also included non-resident and digital service providers. For example, international companies offering online platforms or subscription in Nepal, if their revenue from Nepal consumers exceed rupees 3 million, they must register and pay VAT too. So, what does this mean in practical terms? If you run a small retail or a service businesses and you're approaching these limits, you will need to start preparing for VAT compliances. And for consumers, it helps to understand why prices include the extra percentage. So, whether you're a customer or a business owner, VAT affects everyone, and knowing how it works helps you make smart financial decisions. Now that we have understand how VAT works, let's talk about something new items that have been added under VAT for the fiscal year 2081-82. These are the products that were previously VAT exempt but now be subject to the standard 13% VAT rate. Some of the newly added VAT items include diesel, industrial spare parts, meat and meat products, potato and other essential food items. From my point of view, this decision might be aimed to increase revenue, but it can hit regular consumers the hardest, especially low income households. It's also add pressure on transport and food costs at the time when people are already dealing with inflation. So, while VAT helps fund national development, it's important to keep an eye on how things change affect everyday life. After talking about what's been added under VAT, now let's look at the items that have been newly removed from VAT in the fiscal year 2081-82. This means this product will now be VAT exempt, helping reduce their overall cost from the consumers. Here are some of the key items that are no longer subject to VAT: precious and semi precious stones, medical and surgical items, fruits like guava, water purification machines. Let's talk about some things that are getting more expensive this year because of the rise in excise duty. Excise duty is a type of tax that government puts on certain goods usually to raise revenue or discourage excessive use. And this year it's going up on the specific items. Here's the list. First one, we have ice cream and confectionery items. Yes, our sweet treats are going to cost a little more. It might not seem like a big deal, but it can add up, especially for small shops or local dairy businesses. Second one, the duty has gone up on steel milk cans. These are a commonly used dairy and agriculture sector, so this can change might affect farmers and local milk producers. Third one is we have alcoholic drink. As expected, the tax on hard liquor has increased. This is something we often see in budget as a way to control consumption and boost government income. And finally, here's a new rise on mixed alcohol beverages up to 5% alcohol, like flavored or ready to drink alcohol products. So, what's the key takeaway here? Basically, the government is targeting products that are either luxury items or considered non essential. It's a way to increase revenue without charging income tax rates. From my point of view, some of these make sense, especially on alcohol, but when it comes to things like milk cans, it might create challenges for small producers. It will be important to watch how this affects price in the market. In this year budget, the government has introduced a 10% excise duty on several additional food products, many of which were previously tax-free. Among the new taxed items are certain types of vegetables, especially processed or packed ones, that fall outside the basic staple list that could affect the cost of convenience food and ready-to-cook veggie packs. There are also a new tax on food products that contains less than 6% coca. So while this doesn't include standard chocolate, it does cover chocolate flavored snacks, biscuits, and other similar processed items. Cornflakes and similar breakfast cereals are also now subject to the new 10% duty. This could make morning meals slightly more expensive, especially for those who rely on packed bands. Another item included is bulgur wheat or dalia, which many families use as a healthy food option in Nepali household. Next is a 16% excise duty has been added to the coconut flesh. While this might not impact everyone directly, but it could affect businesses that use coconut in packed or processed product, especially in food or cosmetic industries. Another update in a new excise duty of rupees 240 per liter on alcoholic mixed drinks. These are typically pre-mixed beverages with alcohol content. With this change could lead a noticeable price increase on such items in the market. Lastly, there is a 5% excise duty on glue and related products. These may seem minor, but it can impact small scale manufacturing, packaging businesses, and even general consumers depending on the use. Those changes are part of the government border strategy to diversify revenue source, especially by targeting products that are not daily essential for the most people. Now, let's talk about the hot topic electric vehicle or EVs and how their excise duty has changed this year compared to the last year. In the previous fiscal year, excise duty rate on EVs were relatively low and more encouraging across most categories. But in the new budget of 2081-82, the government has made some noticeable increase. Here's a quick comparison. For EV up to 50 kilowatt, the excise duty is still lower at 5%, which remains unchanged from the last year. For 50 to 100 kilowatt vehicles, the duty has been raised from 10% to 15%. In 100 to 200 kilowatt range, it has increased from 10% to 20%. And for EVs above 200 kilowatt, the big jump is seen from 20% previously to a much higher 35% now. As you can see in the chart, the yellow bar represents the new rate and the red bar shows the last year's. The increase is especially significant for the higher power vehicles. From my perspective, this change shows that the government still wants to support clean electric mobility, but mainly for smaller and affordable EVs that everyday people can buy. On the other hand, it's tightening the taxes on luxury or high performance EVs, probably to control imports and raise revenue. So, if you're planning to buy EV this year, this objected tax structure is definitely something to keep on mind. Now, let's look at the custom duty, especially for unassembled EVs, also known as CKD and SKD units. The two key changes have been made. For EV with 50 to 100 kilowatt, custom duty has been increased from 10% to 20%, and for higher powered EVs, those above 300 kilowatt, the duty has been doubled from 40% to the massive 80%. This is quite a significant jump for a luxury segment. So, what does this mean? It seems like the government wants to encourage electric mobility, but with the focus on smaller and city friendly EVs rather than the high powered imported models. They may also be trying to protect or promote domestic EV assembly in long run. But for now, this will likely make premium electric vehicles more expensive to import and buy in Nepal. So, we have come to the end of our breakdown of Nepal's budget for the fiscal year 2081-82. After going through all the numbers, changes, and the new policies, I would say that this year's budget tries to strike a careful balance. It's not only ambitious, but it's definitely trying to keep the country moving forward. There's a strong push in the area like agriculture, energy, education, and health, which are all crucial for development. We also saw the investment in entrepreneurship, youth empowerment, and social security, which shows that government is thinking about long-term growth in conclusion. At the same time, we can't ignore the increase in excise duty and VAT, which will affect everyday items like fuel and processed foods and even the basic household products. These changes might feel small individually, but they add up, especially for middle and low income families. There are also been a shift in tax structure around electric vehicles, rising excise duty, custom duty, particularly for high powered models. That raises questions about how committed we are to green mobility and sustainable living. But here's the core of it all. It's a step forward, but the real question is how will it be implemented? Because at the end of the day, a budget isn't just about announcement and numbers on paper, it's about action. It's about how efficiently those promises turn into real roads, real schools, real jobs, and better services for real people. If the plans outlined in the budget are implemented with transparency, urgency, and honesty, they can make a genuine difference in people's lives. But without proper execution, even the best politicians can fall short. So let's stay informed, stay engaged, and keep watching how this budget unfolds, not just in headlines, but in everyday reality. Thank you.